Time to talk about Matt Stafford, John. Don't forget, subscribe to this YouTube channel and give this video a like.
Yep, like the video, podcast below in the description. Subscribe to that as well.
The internet blew up on Saturday when Matt Stafford and the Lions, when it became official, they are actually going to part ways. We don't know where he's going, but – and this is the little nugget in the Deshaun Watson thing. Deshaun Watson, for all the tweeting, has not requested a trade formally.
No, he has not.
Stafford and the organization are on the same page. To quote Hawk Harrelson, he gone. Oh, wait. Or is it Kruk and Kite? Either way, he gone. He gone.
Yeah, he gone. I think we had guessed on this for a long period of time. I think if you just went, how long is this guy going to keep playing in Detroit? They go on a new coaching staff. When it was released that Dan Campbell got a 6-year deal, I think most people were like, 6 years for Dan Campbell? Stories come out that he knew about Matt Stafford's not going to be there. So that job maybe becomes, he has a little leverage. You want me to take over a job when we have to pay this quarterback. But I also think it brings clarity. And it lets the league know. And I got some texts from people just around the league that I think the people in the league have known for a couple weeks. But you had to wait till they got a GM and a head coach. Like if you're John Lynch, you had no one to call for a little while until they name these guys the job. And once anyone that's got a new job, it's like, you're not taking Matt Stafford calls like after your press conference. You're probably just trying to figure some shit out, right? You got to move your family. You got to hire some employees. You got to let the dust settle, even though once these two guys became official and they met, and whether I don't even think they've really known each other. That's a little weird about the Lions and the Atlanta Falcons. Like they hired a GM and a coach that were not close. Both
Which
of them.
honestly, if you told Dan Campbell, feels like only somebody who knows him would hire him.
Feels pretty risky. That's where it does feel like a Spielman Ford hired this guy. This is their number one objective right now, right? Once they get their staff together, whatever, like figure out Matt Stafford. And I think when I say figure out Matt Stafford, there's a bidding war going on. Matt Stafford's available. Call us in. And the way that talked to several GMs and executives that thought just the price of admission, as Guy Haberman likes to say, the price just to get a conversation. Like, do not call me. You're one in 2021, so this draft in April. That is just the price of admission to get a fucking phone call, right? That's just the baseline, right? You know, it's like certain country clubs. Like, you want to join this? The buy-in at the country club is $500,000. So before we even talk about whether you're in or not, like you have to have $500,000 cash the moment you show up.
Whether we accept you,
yeah. So the way that just talking around, people thought that when the dust settled, like a first and a third. And I had some people that thought it's not crazy to think that they end up with a couple ones. I mean, Jamal Adams, obviously Jalen Ramsey, some players of recent memory. Now, they were younger, but they had to be paid, have gone for a couple ones. So that's probably where they're going. Your one is the minimum, but we're looking for 2 ones. Now, to get 2 ones, you're going to need a bidding process or a super desperate team. And I think there are a lot of desperate / teams that are going to be willing to bid for this guy.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're talking about multiple picks, the Niners have 12 and 43. The Colts have 21 and 54, right? The Patriots have 15 and 46. The Panthers have 8. The Panthers could want him. But there's another factor here, right? Which is this has been actually the fact that it stayed quiet this long, an indication that he has a good working relationship with the organization. At least they have similar self-interest here. So you would figure, right, that they're not just going to be able to send him anywhere without his approval. He's going to be involved.
I think he's going to go to a good team, unless it's a team that he wants to go to that's not as good, that he like the Panthers.
Yeah.
Can I just read you? I asked a buddy in that division. That I said, can you just give me a Cliff Note scouting report on the guy? I think there's a lot of people, if you listen to this podcast, you haven't watched that much Matt Stafford. We don't watch that much Lions. And I think there's some debate with how good he is, right? People think he's good, but like how good? I think if you ask the casual fan, they'd be like a good starter, but they don't view him as like a Pro Bowl level player. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you and I have talked about him over the years, and I think we've established we're pro Matt Stafford on this show. But when I tweeted about him on Saturday, I was actually a little surprised with how much negativity I got back about like his, 0-3 in the playoffs. some of his overall record stuff. Anyway, so yeah,
He's only been a one. For example, Matt Stafford's been a 1 Pro Bowl. Derek Carr's been a 3. There's no one in the league that would take Carr over Stafford, including Gruden. Here was the thing that my buddy said back. High-end starter, elite arm talent, good throwing motion and rhythm, can make every throw, savvy with manipulation, can carry the offense. Pros and cons that come with the gunslinger mentality, has had some durability problems recently.
Yeah. And not just any, right? Like a back injury. It's one thing if you break a foot. He had a back injury that knocked him out last year. And from what I read, like he did, like one of the Lions beat writers I read wrote it held up enough on him this year. Like that scares me. That scares me more than his performance because I think he is a player worthy of trading the 12th pick for.
I agree. And for a guy that feels, I was texting with another buddy who's on the Chiefs staff, and he was like, God, because I was just asking him bullshitting about we were just talking, and he's like, God, I thought Stafford was like 38. I'm like, yeah, I thought he was like in the Rivers, Eli, Big Ben crew. Guy, he's 32, but he's been remember, he came into the league, he was 20 years old when he got drafted. But like, if I'm going to give for example, the Niners, as someone texts me, their first round pick and their third round pick are equivalent of the Colts first and second, because their 12 is such a powerful pick relative to pick 22 or 24 or anyone drafted in the mid 20s. 12 is so powerful. And remember last year when the Niners when they did the Buckner trade, and people were like, when you look at Jimmy Johnson's chart, the Buckner trade just straight up for pick 12 was like 30 points off the Khalil Mack trade. Now, part of that was like he got multiple ones, but those ones ended up pick like 24 and 23, remember? Mm-hmm. The picks in the mid-20s aren't as valuable as pick 12. Pick 12 is a very, very valuable pick. But the more I think about it, just 12 straight up for Stafford, I think it's a no-brainer. What if all of a sudden his back starts giving out? You'd be fucking kicking yourself.
Yeah,
there is risk involved when you talk about a guy who does feel like he's taken a pretty good beating over the years.
You would say the upside, and you posted the video of his shoulder, of him like popping his shoulder back in, running back into the game.
That was his rookie year.
Taking Dante Culpepper out of the huddle. That's tough guy, man. Right? Like that is tough guy. You love it. But it's also an example of what's been happening to him to some degree over the course of his career, because he has proven toughness because he's played through being beat to shit sometimes.
Yeah, and when you're on bad teams, you usually get beat up, right?
Yeah, John, I guess when you start looking at some of the performance number, like the postseason, the lack of postseason performance, I get maybe some people's hesitation. As someone who has watched him a lot over the course of his career, I think just the guy is clearly another level of quarterback that the 49ers with Kyle Shanahan, and I know their team's going to change a lot, but the basic talent they have can win the NFC with Matthew Stafford doing more than Jimmy Garoppolo did, but it's not risk-free, and you do have another team. The fact is the Colts are more desperate than the Niners are, right?
Yes.
The Colts are more desperate than the 49ers are, and we saw they traded a pick for DeForest Buckner is better at his position than Stafford is at his relative to the other players at his position, but Stafford plays quarterback. And they traded what the Niners have for Buckner last year. So you got to think they'll trade 21 for...
Well, they literally don't have a quarterback. Rivers is gone, and Jacoby's a free agent. So, like, at the end of the day, the 49ers just do have Jimmy, right? Whether he's good or not, he's just become this polarizing entity. They do just have him. The Colts really don't have anything. And they just, once upon a time, when Kyle Shanahan took this job, and remember, they kind of immediately cut Kaepernick, they did not have any quarterbacks on the roster. So they immediately had to, like, sign Hoyer, they signed someone else, and then they draft CJ. Like, you have to accumulate some players.
Yeah.
And for the Colts, I can't do 2-1s if I'm the Niners. I've been thinking a lot about that because one of my one is way better than everyone else's ones. And I think I'd be shocked if Belichick would do 2-1s for Matt Stafford. That has not been his MO, unless he's just tired of watching Tom win and him lose, which you never know. I would do pick 12 straight up for Matt Stafford. But in my opinion, that's a shitload. right?
Yeah, and I also think part of this that we haven't discussed, part of this is the evaluation of the draft. If you're willing to trade 2-1s for Matt Stafford, then you can probably move up in the draft with your right. You can move up in the draft for one of the rookies.
You probably get 12 to like 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, I mean, so part of this is like, do you think Sam Darnold for a second or do you think you could trade a third for Sam Darnold? Like, do you like Sam Darnold? Do you like Trey Lance?
Well, for example, the Eagles. Jeffrey Lurie talked about how Doug didn't deserve his job, and basically he wants to win, and we might just tank next year. You don't think they would go from like 4 to 12 for next year's 1 and maybe an extra 2 or something?
Yeah.
They would gladly do that. Gladly be strong, but they would be a team that would be open-minded about doing it, hit a huge reset, accumulate some more picks, and just kind of set it back to take a couple steps forward in a couple years, right?
Right.
They would be the team that I could see doing something like that with. And if the Niners were to get in the top 5, boom. And then you have a guy who's young, who's fresh, under contract, who's cheap. And Stafford's relatively cheap too, but there's a major difference between paying a guy $6 million a year. Like, that's just a large savings. That's always my first inclination. But there's a lot of out of your control, right? You don't know who's going to get picked before, even if the Eagles and Howie agree over like a month from now to do that deal. Like, we'll do that deal with you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't happen on draft day, but like part of it on draft day would be hoping X player was going to be there. What if X player goes the pick before? There's going to be a lot to shake out, and we got to see, like, the thing with the NFL is the free agency happens before the draft. So, the Stafford situation is going to play itself out. I think there's going to be you let this out now to let a huge bidding process go forward. I do wonder if the Niners just have, like, they'll be more quick to draw a line in the sand where, like you said, the Colts, there's some desperation there. I think Washington, I mean, Ron just beat cancer. He's fucking deal with Dwayne Haskins. Like, I don't think they're just going to, like, sit on their hands. You think Ron's there to just, like, develop some, like, Trey Lance?
They're not that far away. Like, their defense is really, like, and their defensive players are really good. So
Do you think it would make some sense in Washington? Just get him there.
Absolutely. Now, yeah.
Could they trade a couple ones? Because their one's not that great. I mean, it's not bad, but it's in the 20s, right? It's 20.
Yep.
So I don't feel as good for the Niners.
But here's what we know, because we talked about a lot.
But I think they're going to be in the mix, and I think, there are reports they're already calling. Of course they are. I mean, they're not idiots.
They're pretty attractive to him. They are right in the thick of it in terms of what they have to give. And what we know now that we didn't know before is that this is actually happening. It's actually happening. Okay. Let's let it play out over like 3 months.
It does feel like most people think the Colts are going to be the most aggressive.
Makes sense. But I'll say it again. I mentioned earlier the idea that the Lions should not send him within the conference is crazy to me. Like, get the best deal you can get.
Would you trade him to the Bears for 2 1s?
What are my other offers?
If that's your only 2-1 offer, you trade him to the Bears?
Yeah, I mean, what's the Bears' pick right now? It's not as good as you.
Well, I mean, they were in the first round of the playoffs, so it's probably 19-20.
Yeah, I might not do that. But I like, there is an offer I would take from the Bears. It would. I mean, their ones would probably have to be better. But you stink. Like, whatever.
Yeah, it's hard, in the division.
I understand, but
talk
the
about
Bears
the division
to me
teams a lot.
The division fine, but conference, like, don't send them to the Niners. I saw a couple people.
Yeah.
Right, like, don't send him in the conference. Like, this isn't baseball. He's not a pitcher. You're not facing him 6 times a year, and you're not going to be in the NFC Championship game.
Do you think Joe Douglas would have traded Jamal Adams to the Patriots for 2 1s and a 2?
I actually kind of think he might have.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, there comes a point where the deals. I think the reason he ended up in Seattle because Joe Douglas like, are you fucking kidding me? 2 1s and a 2. There is a number. I don't care who the player is and to what team. Like, if the Bears offer you 2 1s and a 2 for Matt Stafford, and the next best offer is like a 1 and a 2, is a no brainer.
Sure.
You're hitting the reset anyway, so you might as well, like, it's just 2 times a year. Maybe for the Bears, you should be aggressive, right?
Not a bad
Maybe Dan
call.
Campbell doesn't care.
Yeah. Why not? Why not?